Now let's turn to money power politics. Democrats on the debate stage focused heavily on economic issues. And despite their differences, all 12 candidates agreed that the economy is not working for the middle class. Candidates criticized trade deals, suggested a minimum wage increase, warned about job automation, and proposed radical new federal programs like universal basic income and the Green New Deal. Joining me now to dissect these proposals, Matt Stoller, author of the new book, Goliath: The 100-Year War Between Monopoly and Democracy, and Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com. Matt, I turn to you first. Our colleague over at CNBC, Jim Cramer, tweeted last night basically saying all businesses were vilified on that debate stage, saying these candidates truly despise business. Did you get that impression?
No, I didn't. I got the impression that candidates like Elizabeth Warren, like Bernie Sanders, like Cory Booker recognize there's a crisis in business and a crisis of capitalism. And in Goliath, I trace this to something very simple, which is corporate monopolies. These are hurting business, but they're also creating inequality. They're hurting labor. They're stripping wealth from communities. And we saw a discussion last night about something we haven't heard for decades, which is antitrust, or the system of laws designed to address these monopolies. We've actually faced this problem before in the early 20th century. Robber barons owned our businesses, corrupted our politics, and we used antitrust laws and regulatory tools to address them, many of which are still on the books. And what I heard last night is that the candidates are willing to use these tools again to basically free our people and free our businesses.
Jason, what was your take?
Look, I don't think any of these people hate business. And even Bernie Sanders, who's a Democratic socialist, I don't think he hates business. He's certainly part of the 1% himself. But
it's the rules, not the businesses. When Elizabeth Warren says they're just operating for their shareholders, that's not the business's fault. That's currently the rules.
Exactly. And so I think Warren tends to have ideologically the best plan. She's like, look, don't hate the game, change the rules, right? She says that all the time. And I
don't
think
hate the player, hate the game.
Well, yeah.
Don't hate the player. Hate the game, not the player.
Yes, exactly.
You need me to tell you that? Yes.
That's how the kids say it. But when she's on the campaign trail, she always talks about the rules. But that's the key thing. I think of the candidates who all say, look, we need businesses to work better. And I'll be honest, Stephanie, you've heard me say this before. I lived in Ohio for 10 years. I think that most of the candidates, except for Mayor Pete, really, and Yang, really didn't talk about the specific issues that Ohio is facing for an Ohio-based debate. I think Warren actually does the best job of like, look, these are the policies I'll implement to make the rules more fair. When she talked about the Consumer Protection Bureau and things like that, I think she's best at it. The rest of them were sort of talking ideologically. I don't know how they're actually going to make the changes they talk about.
Let's stay on Andrew Yang. He talked about corporations and sort of reining in their power. Here's what he had to say.
It's not like breaking up these big tech companies will revive Main Street businesses around the country. Using a 20th century antitrust framework will not work. We need new solutions and a new toolkit.
I'm not willing to give up and let a handful of monopolists dominate our economy and our democracy. It's time to fight back.
Does Yang have a point? Are the current antitrust laws just outdated?
No, of course not. It's ridiculous. We've known about stealing and theft and monopolization for 1,000 years. Just enforce the laws we have on the books. Don't try to pretend like, the concentration of power that exists in the hands of a few is just some natural thing that's happening because of technology. No, we make choices about the rules of our markets, and that's very clear. Andrew Yang is just avoiding power so he can tell a story that's favorable to the powerful people that are backing him. It's ridiculous. It's annoying. It's stupid. It's like the same thing. He's saying, oh, we're going to automate all the trucking. Well, you know what? I've seen press releases about automated trucks since 2011. And you know what? I want to know why all the robots want to live in China and Mexico. We've seen this kind of con artistry over and over and over in the 20th century.
No. To say that automation isn't real, look at the steel industry, okay? We're putting out the same.
But we've had automation since the 1790s.
We're putting out the same amount of steel as we were 30 years ago with half the amount of employees. So come on now, Matt.
No, we've had automation since the 1790s. Productivity growth. We should see, if the robots were really that big a deal, we should see massive productivity growth. And we don't. We see productivity slowdowns. And that's because, you've seen declines in capital investment. The argument here is nonsense. I've seen this argument before. I go into it in Goliath in the 1920s and 30s. They made the same arguments to justify monopoly power and banking power. It's a con. Don't fall for it. We need to understand our history. This is the power of money talking. And on that stage, you had, no, it really is.
Hold
that's what's going on
here.
here.
We need to understand our history, but we also need to understand the future.
Right.
If you look at where corporate America is spending, where did they take the tax cut money? It's on R&D. It is on automation. I'm not saying we're living in the Jetsons world and a robot is handing you
They're
your
not
hamburger.
that's just
but Laverne
nonsense.
and Shirley are not getting their jobs back at the bottle
This is
factory.
just not true. They are not. They are spending that. That's why interest rates are so low. They're sticking it into safe assets, aka government bonds. You see negative interest rates all over the world. This is because corporations aren't spending on R&D because there's no competition. Look, the reality is we have to talk about what's going on in our economy, and that's power. It's monopoly power. In Goliath, I go over this. We've had this problem for 100 years. We've had these debates for 100 years. We need to start having these debates again. The Democrats are doing that. I'm glad Andrew Yang was up there to present, what I think is a completely dishonest narrative, but it's a narrative that we have to deal with because a lot of people believe it. And we have to look at power. Power is the issue. Monopoly power in markets like peanut butter, in search engines, in Facebook. These are not companies that, Google, syringes, it's all over the place. Google and Facebook are monopolies because they bought lots of other companies, not because, they invented cool things in a garage. It's nonsense. Let's start going to the boardroom, which is where the power is. That's what Democrats were talking about last night. It's why they brought up Robert Bork twice, who is an antitrust attorney, because that's what the problem is. It's the rules. It's about power.
Stephanie, both things can be true. Look, first off, you can
but
have companies
both
that put
true. It's just not.
Both things are true because
no,
you can talk
not.
to people. You can talk to people in Lordstown, Ohio, who lost their jobs because of automation, which made things more efficient and put some people out of shifts. You went from 4 shifts to 3 shifts. You can talk to people in small towns who used to do telemarketing and phone operating and those things. Some of them have moved abroad, and some of them have become an automatic voice system. So, look, I understand what you're saying.
Is monopoly power.
Monopoly power. You can keep talking loud. Doesn't mean you're right. Monopoly power can be a problem when we talk about the economy, but you cannot ignore the human capital that is no longer able to work because of different kinds of advancements. Now, if we want to move those people into different kinds of jobs, that is a realistic conversation that I think in many ways Andrew Yang misses. But you can't pretend that people are not losing their jobs to advancement in technology. That is the history of our economy. That is the history of the West.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.